Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're checking all the cameras for hidden secrets, details, and making of facts you didn't know about the wildly popular Five Nights at Freddy's series. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Humble Origins.
Welcome to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, a magical place for kids and grown-ups alike, where fantasy and fun come to life.
Believe it or not, Five Nights at Freddy's wasn't Scott Cawthon's first game. Before surviving the animatronics of FNAF, Scott created more family-friendly titles such as The Pilgrim's Progress and, most importantly, Chipper & Sons Lumber Company. The latter would prove to be the most influential in Scott's later work due to criticisms about the character designs being too creepy and that they looked like animatronics. After initially taking this feedback to heart and almost quitting game development altogether, Scott would then take these negative reviews as inspiration and rework them for the Five Nights at Freddy's series alongside real-life inspirations such as the prominent arcade franchise Chuck E. Cheese. Talk about turning a negative into a positive.
You might only have a few seconds to react. Not that you would be in any danger, of course. I'm not implying that.
Development details.
Hello! Hey, you're doing great! Most people don't last this long.
The newspaper job recruitment ads at the beginning of every game not only detail the job and its requirements, but also hide some details about the game's development from Scott himself, as well as funny Easter eggs. Although the text around the Help Wanted ad is blurred out, dedicated fans have managed to decipher much of it. And while the text in the clipping of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 details the game's development and Scott's own struggles with bringing the game to life, the blurred text of the original is far more entertaining. Within the blurred text, Scott takes some cheeky shots at the player amidst text that reads, "Blah blah blah, this ad has nothing to do with anything relevant to the game," while he also taunts players claiming, "You probably won't make it past night 3. He also recommends they find other, less dangerous employments for the summer.
And he becomes more active if the cameras remain off for long periods of time. I guess he doesn't like being watched.
Kickstarter failure.
So remember, these characters hold a special place in the hearts of children, and we need to show them a little respect, right? Okay.
It's hard to imagine now, but before the first Five Nights at Freddy's was released, Scott couldn't get anyone to support or even show interest in the title. Given the recent successes of Kickstarter games of the time, Scott initially tried to start a Kickstarter for FNAF with the meager goal of $10,000. However, after the campaign being live for only 3 days and with 0 backers, Scott canceled the Kickstarter entirely and focused on creating the best game he could with the tools available. Considering what a smash hit FNAF ended up being, it's honestly hard to say if the campaign had succeeded, just how it would have impacted the game, or if it would have lost some of its charm with a bigger budget.
Yeah, they don't tell you these things when you sign up. But hey, first station of the breeze. I'll chat with you tomorrow.
Soloed.
Hey, listen, I may not be around to send you a message tomorrow. It's been a bad night here for me.
Given the sheer popularity and the scale of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, it's easy to forget the entire series up until the most recent games like Help Wanted and Security Breach were all created by Scott Cawthon himself. These days, tales of solo game devs are common, but it was almost unheard of for a game by a single developer to explode into a cultural icon like Five Nights at Freddy's. Not only was Scott the designer and programmer, but he was also the game's marketer and PR department, staying active in the fan community and listening to fan feedback. In the golden age of social media and the user-friendly tools of game design, it's easier than ever to get started in game development. But Five Nights at Freddy's and Scott Cawthon unknowingly helped pave the way for future indie creators.
I had an idea. If you happen to get caught and want to avoid getting stuffed into a Freddy suit, try playing dead. You know, go limp. Then there's a chance that maybe they'll think that you're an empty costume instead.
Extra lives. Much of Five Nights at Freddy's challenge comes from surviving the aforementioned 5 nights, but originally the game could have been a lot easier. Scott initially toyed with the idea of including a lives meter in the game. This inclusion likely would have completely broken the game's immersion and the tension of surviving each night. It's likely Scott realized this as well and removed the feature before release. Given how every game these days is catered towards making the experience more approachable for every player, we can appreciate Scott removing the live system to keep the series challenging. Scary screams. As if the thought of surviving against animatronic creations that are supposed to be designed for happy childhood memories wasn't already scary enough, the screams and laughter of children you hear throughout the game are recordings of real children. The laughter makes sense because children's laughter in this kind of environment is naturally unsettling, but the screams are especially creepy. The screams and sounds the animatronics make when they catch you are actually the screams of real children, either pitched up or down depending on the animatronic. This unintentionally plays into the overall narrative of the animatronics being possessed by dead children. Sometimes there's things we just wish we didn't know, and this is one of them. Sequential order.
And to help you get started down this new and exciting career path. Now, I want you to forget anything you may have heard about the old locations,
No one, especially Scott himself, could have foreseen just how popular the Five Nights at Freddy's series would become, and initially, Scott's wife even encouraged him not to include the planned dark and disturbing lore that would become a staple of the series. However, after the success of the first game, Scott took the little narrative nuggets he hid within the first game and slowly built out the horrific history of Freddy's with a surprisingly deep amount of lore told through not only the games, but lore bibles and encyclopedias, novels, and more for fans to dig into and piece together the overall plot of the series. Due to this unexpected success, however, the game's narrative is told out of sequential order, with the earliest game in the timeline being FNAF 4, then 2, 1, Sister Location, 3, and finally Pizza Simulator, tying up the original series' narrative.
Here at Fazbear Entertainment, we value fun, family, and food. But more importantly, we value our commitment to atoning for past mistakes and tying up loose ends.
15 minutes of fame.
Hey, do me a favor. Maybe sometime you could check inside those suits in the back room. I'm gonna try to hold out until someone checks. Maybe it won't be so bad.
Given the unexpected and viral success of the original Five Nights at Freddy's, none were more surprised than Scott himself. After the initial disappointments of his earlier titles, this sudden meteoric rise into the spotlight had Scott worried he wouldn't be able to match the first game's popularity and thought it was a flash-in-the-pan one-off. Because of this, Scott kept a folder titled My 15 Minutes of Internet Fame, filled with internet stories, articles, pictures, and other moments of Five Nights at Freddy's being super popular at the time. Thankfully, this 15 minutes turned into a franchise beloved by millions of fans that has so far spanned a decade and become a permanent fixture of pop culture.
Yeah, never mind. Scratch that. It's best just not to get caught. Okay, I'll leave you to it. See you on the flip side.
Broken Foxy. Scott personally designed all of the now iconic animatronics seen throughout the Five Nights at Freddy's series, and all of them have gone through a few transformations throughout the series. Whether it's their original classic forms, Toy, Withered, or Nightmare, every one of them is immediately recognizable. However, one in particular has seen better days from the very beginning. Throughout the entire series, Foxy is always a mangled mess of broken parts and exposed wires. The reason for this is Scott was designing Foxy during a very bumpy car ride, and rather than smooth out the rougher edges after the drive, decided to keep the mangled version of Foxy and make this his default design. Career launcher.
Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier and welcome to Five Nights at Freddy's.
Five Nights at Freddy's success didn't just put Scott Cawthon in the spotlight, it launched the careers of many prominent and beloved YouTubers today. Most famously, Markiplier's channel exploded after his playthrough of FNAF, and each entry in the series remains some of the most popular videos on his entire channel. Another channel that exploded due to Five Nights at Freddy's was Game Theorists, and their breakdowns and theories about the lore of every game made MatPat one of the FNAF community's most famous members, even earning him a cameo in the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, where he even included his famous catchphrase.
Well, that's no fun. You do realize that lunch is the most important meal of the day.
Thought it was breakfast.
Some people say that, but you know, it's just a theory.
Sparky the Dog. The Five Nights at Freddy's lore runs deep, with numerous characters and animatronics appearing in the books that don't appear in the games, but one animatronic that many fans originally associated with the series never appeared in any of the games or other media. Sparky the Dog was an animatronic of a dog, believed to be hidden in the first game, and after a series of screenshots began to pop up online, the conspiracy of Sparky the Dog and how to find him spread like wildfire. In the end, Sparky was nothing more than an urban legend created by Tumblr users Codyabear and Win, photoshopping the images and spreading them online. Although Sparky never officially exists within the canon, he does get a brief cameo appearance in the Five Nights at Freddy's film, including the film's diner being named after him. Toxic Mask.
They've spent a small fortune on these new animatronics. Facial recognition, advanced mobility, they even let them walk around during the day.
The addition of the mask in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 allowed players to temporarily hide from the approaching animatronics since there was no door to slam shut in their faces this time around. The mask works against all the animatronics besides Foxy and the puppet, who are able to see past your ruse and attack you anyways. However, Scott initially planned for there to be a game mechanic to keep players from hiding behind the mask all night. Originally, there was going to be a toxic meter, and the longer you wore the mask, the more poisoned you would become, forcing the player to remove the mask after a certain amount of time, and through overuse, eventually leading to a game over. The idea was scrapped during development, and it's likely Foxy and Puppet's ability to see past your disguise was the solution to deter the overuse of the mask.
So when it gets quiet, they think they're in the wrong room. So then they go try to find where the people are, and in this case, that's your office.
Poster switchers. The Five Nights at Freddy's series is notorious for hiding not only narrative clues in the many posters and decorations in each location, but sometimes fun Easter eggs as well, such as honking Freddy's nose on the Celebrate poster in the first game. However, this isn't the only poster hiding secrets. Occasionally, the Let's Party poster will change to an image of Golden Freddy, or even a picture of Freddy ripping his own head off. Some people have linked this image of Freddy to the children initially struggling to escape the animatronics after their spirits became trapped inside. Freddy himself also has a faded handprint on his face that some speculate means the image of Freddy attempting to rip off his own head was an actual event that occurred before the game. The Bite of 87.
They used to be allowed to walk around during the day too, but then there was the Bite of 87. Yeah.
One of the most infamous events in the entire Five Nights at Freddy's series, the Bite of 87 led to the closure of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in Five Nights at Freddy's 2. However, despite the significance of the event and the continued references to the bite itself, very little information is known about who was bitten and by which animatronic. Many speculate the victim was night security guard Jeremy Fitzgerald, as the night before the incident, Jeremy is informed he will be moved to the day shift for the final birthday party to keep an eye on the animatronics, so they don't hurt anyone.
We have one more event scheduled for tomorrow, a birthday. You'll be on day shift. Wear your uniform. Stay close to the animatronics. Make sure they don't hurt anyone, okay?
Due to the mysterious nature of such a canon event, many originally believed the big bite that unfortunately killed the crying child in Five Nights at Freddy's 4 was this event, but this has been debunked simply by that event taking place in 1983 and at Fredbear's Family Diner. Yellow Bear. One of the rarest encounters in the original Five Nights at Freddy's is that of Golden Freddy. The only indicator that he is about to appear is a poster of his face in Cam 2B, and once you return to the room, Golden Freddy will be waiting to attack you, even if the doors are closed and end up crashing your game. However, Golden Freddy wasn't originally the name for this animatronic. In the game files, he's only referred to as Yellow Bear. It wasn't until Markiplier coined the term Golden Freddy that even Scott Cawthon changed the name of this rare encounter, as the title was just more appropriate. Golden Freddy is also one of the most mysterious animatronics in the games and is believed to be possessed by the spirit of a boy named Cassidy, who is also regarded as one of the most vengeful spirits in the entire series. Translation gibberish. At the start of Night 5, rather than hearing a new message from Phone Guy, players are instead greeted by a strange and distorted voice speaking in deep tones before the call ends in animatronic screams and static. While this initially confused many, the community banded together and translated the gibberish as a passage reading from the autobiography of a yogi, slowed and played in reverse. The significance of this particular passage discusses the belief that all animals, plants, and even metals share a similar life force. This theory ended up playing a substantial role in the overall plot of the Five Nights at Freddy's series as the game continued. Another neat bit of phone trivia is the sounds players hear in the background throughout Five Nights at Freddy's 4 are the calls from Phone Guy in the first Five Nights at Freddy's pitched up or down. The real Freddy's. When Scott Cawthon began to promote Five Nights at Freddy's 4, fans noticed a series of 7s and 8s appearing in random sequences. Some fans plugged these numbers into Google Maps, and the coordinates ended up leading them to a real-life pizzeria in Virginia. Fans began calling the pizzeria so much, thinking it was some kind of Easter egg or ARG, that Scott himself had to step in and tell fans it was just a coincidence and removed all references to the numbers in the promotional material. However, thankfully, the pizzeria, after finding out the cause of all the confusion, took the incident in stride and offered local fans an unofficial Fazbear's Pizzeria special.
Now, I want you to forget anything you may have heard about the old locations,
420. After surviving the initial nights at Freddy's, players can then attempt to survive a custom night, and players are allowed to customize the AI of the animatronics and get one last chance at survival. However, one mode was so difficult that not even Scott himself thought it was possible: the dreaded 20-20-20-20 mode. This puts the AI for all the animatronics to their highest possible level. Scott thought this mode so impossible, he didn't even add a star reward for its completion until streamer Big Bug managed to beat it live during a stream. Since then, the mode has become a challenge for the most die-hard FNAF fans and a rite of passage for series veterans. Beta testers.
I actually worked in that office before you. I'm finishing up my last week now, as a matter of fact, so...
Because Scott was the sole developer on the original Five Nights at Freddy's games, he used his family, specifically his children, as beta testers for the games. Fun fact, all the gameplay footage you see in the first trailer is captured from his kids playing the game. However, it would seem Scott's kids got a little too good at the games over the years. Many complained that the fourth night of Sister Location was especially difficult, but during beta testing, Scott's son was able to beat it on the first try, so he thought the difficulty level was fine. During production on Ultimate Custom Night, Scott promised his kids $50 for every game challenge they were able to complete, which in turn led to one of his kids pulling an all-nighter and racking up hundreds of dollars in beta tester pay from their dad. We respect the hustle, kid. Freddy's theme.
I always wondered what was in all those empty heads back there.
Five Nights at Freddy's doesn't have a ton of music, instead opting to let the ambience create the mood. But the few tracks it does have often have special meaning for their inclusion. The song that fans have designated Freddy's theme that plays just before Freddy attacks is actually a music box version of the famous 1875 opera Carmen, specifically the Toreador song. Scott's use of this specific song is significant due to the lyrics being eerily reminiscent of the player attempting to survive the night at the pizzeria. With lyrics referencing dark eyes watching you, it's not difficult to make the connection between the two. The use of specifically a children's music box rendition only adds to the creepiness. Trailer tricks. Misleading trailers are a fairly common practice these days, featuring elements, gameplay mechanics, and even characters that don't appear in the final game. However, even in the earliest days of Five Nights at Freddy's, fans noticed some significant changes between the trailer and the final game. In the reveal trailer, Bonnie had the ability to run and can be seen booking it down a hallway, despite the fact he doesn't have this ability in the final game. Instead, it's Foxy, while Bonnie can teleport from one room to another along his route. It's unknown when or why these changes were made, but likely Scott felt Foxy running at top speed was way more menacing, and he was right. Nightmare reality.
Maybe they'll think that you're an empty costume instead. Then again, if they think you're an empty costume, they might try to stuff a metal skeleton into you. I wonder how that would work.
Five Nights at Freddy's is generally regarded as one of the scarier video game series due to its unpredictable jump scares, which launched the game into popularity with fans and the reactions from Let's Plays, but fans weren't the only ones terrified by the games. Scott himself has stated that development on the first game gave him nightmares. In particular, he had a nightmare in which Bonnie was standing in the hallway outside his room, and when he rushed to check the door, he found it was already locked, which in-game means that there's already someone inside the room. Why out of all the animatronics his nightmare was about what is commonly believed to be the least scary out of all the animatronics remains unknown. Phone guy.
Hello? See, I told you your first night wouldn't be a problem. You're a natural.
As the sole developer for the original entries, Scott took on a lot of responsibilities with the game's creation. But there is one aspect many fans might not have even thought about. In the first two games, the player is greeted every night by a call from a supervisor simply known as Phone Guy or Phone Dude, who gives updates about the animatronics and basically all the background details fans need to know. But the voice of the caller is actually Scott himself. After the breakout success of the series, many fans still had no idea Scott was the man on the other end of the line until Scott started doing interviews about the series and the connection was made.
Hello? What on earth are you doing there? Didn't you get the memo?
The end.
Hey, glad you came back for another night. I promise it'll be a lot more interesting this time.
After the success of the first two entries in the series, Scott intended the third Five Nights at Freddy's game to be the last. However, after fans expressed dissatisfaction with the lack of jump scares or meaningful updates to the series' lore, Scott then went back and developed not only a fourth entry, but also Sister Location, Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, Ultimate Custom Night, and a selection of spin-off games as well. However, alongside expanding on the lore and narrative after the games with a series of novels, which may or may not be considered canon, Scott then teamed up with Steel Wool Games to create a new generation of Five Nights at Freddy's games with Help Wanted, Security Breach, Help Wanted 2, and most recently, The Secret of the Mimic. Although Scott initially wanted to leave the series behind, he had too much fun making the games and doesn't appear to be stopping anytime soon.
I know how much you like to fight, so I'll add a new problem to your night.
Ruined DLC. While the new generation of Five Nights at Freddy's might not be for everyone, Scott is using these titles to greatly expand on the lore of the franchise in surprising ways. Alongside the new glam rock versions of familiar animatronics, The Secret of the Mimic changed everything fans thought they knew about the series. Security Breach also introduced a new animatronic called Burn Trap. However, due to Scott withholding specific details about the animatronic, Steel Wool integrated this new threat in a way Scott didn't intend. In order to course correct, Scott and the dev team released the Ruin DLC for Security Breach, which connects directly to The Secret of the Mimic and reveals Burn Trap is really the Mimic, bringing the narrative back on track with Scott's initial vision. What fact about Five Nights at Freddy's surprised you the most? Did we miss any that you thought were interesting? Share your tales of survival in the comments. Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from MojoPlays, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.